There we go. All right, again, thank you guys for being here. Today for those of you that I haven't met yet, I am Holly Schreiber, the Director of Sponsored Programs for UTIA. I am going to talk to you all today about our new proposal intake questionnaire. This is the new method of notifying OSP of an upcoming proposal. Previously, faculty had been instructed to email aggrant@utk.edu. This replaces that. It's a way for us to get more information more quickly and thus be able to provide better and more efficient assistance and guidance. So today we're going to talk about the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the PIQ. The who uses this form? Obviously, the faculty use this form. The principal investigator or the project director fills out the form. You could also have someone else fill out the form, maybe a co-PI or a graduate assistant, but generally it's going to be the PI or the PD. This applies to all units within UTIA. So Ag Research, UT Extension, and the College of Vet Med all use this form. And obviously the OSP coordinators use this form after the PI has completed it. What is the PIQ? PIQ is the Proposal Intake Questionnaire. As I said earlier, it's the new means of notifying OSP of an upcoming or planned proposal. It is an online form through Microsoft Forms that has built-in logic. You'll see in my live demonstration at the end of this how that built-in logic works. That's one of the reasons we went with an online form, so that we can have that built in rather than going with a static form. One item of note, since this is housed in Microsoft Forms, it does require you to be logged in with your NetID in order to be able to fill it out. That's a security feature that Microsoft Forms has built in so that we can allow file uploads. If you have an RFP or a project summary or something for your proposal and you want to upload that file to get that to us, you can do that through this form, but it does require that you be logged in to Microsoft with your NetID. When is the PIQ used? It's used for all types of proposals, new submissions, resubmissions, continuations. It's also used for subaward proposals when we are going to be a subaward institution to another university. And then we also want this to be used when you are submitting a white paper, concept paper, pre-proposal letters of intent, those kind of quasi-proposals. Most of those do require OSP involvement because many of those must be submitted via grants.gov or an agency website that OSP has to do that submission. But even on the ones that don't require OSP to submit, maybe it's just an email to the project director, maybe it's an organization site that the PI has access to log in and submit that, please still fill out a proposal information questionnaire for us. That allows us to, one, assist you if you need assistance with that submission or with that development of that white paper. But it also allows us to know when the final due date, if you're asked to submit a full proposal, it also goes ahead and lets us put that on our calendar and be prepared for that. And then when and if, hopefully when, you're selected to submit a full proposal, we've already got a jump start on that because we already have that basic information and we're going to be able to help you respond to that full proposal much quicker. It does not, so I have a question of, does it apply to UTK internal proposals as well? It does not. You can use it if you want us to be involved and you want some involvement, but you don't have to do that because OSP is not always involved in those UTK internal proposals. In terms of timing, when you should use the PIQ, as soon as you think you might pursue a proposal. I know that sometimes a faculty member will plan to submit to a particular program and be thinking about it, be developing it with his team, maybe getting preliminary data together. And after a while, they realize that, oh, my preliminary data is not where I think it is. This isn't going to be a strong proposal. Or maybe one of your team members bows out or something to that effect. That's okay. Please go ahead and notify us, even if you're not 100% certain yet. We would much rather take that proposal off of our plate 6 or 8 weeks down the road than try and have to add it when we're only a couple of weeks out from the due date. So please notify us as soon as you think you might pursue a proposal. I also want you to think about timing of periods that our office is extremely busy. And in those periods, you need to notify us even earlier. One of those is near the holidays. Obviously, we shut down for almost 2 weeks at the Christmas holidays. People are gone around Thanksgiving, that sort of thing. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about notifying us. Also, AFRI season is a huge workload for our staff. That season this year is going to start in July, is when the first USDA AFRI proposals will be due, and that goes all the way through September. And we will have literally hundreds of proposals in that time frame. So if you know you're going to be submitting something in that time frame, be sure to notify us really early. So I have a question of, if an LOI is needed before full submission, do we use the PIQ before submitting the LOI or only after the LOI has been accepted? We would really like that PIQ before that LOI submission, because then we've got some of that ready to go when you've been accepted. You probably won't need to do a second one for the full submission. If you do one for the letter of intent, we'll be able to just build off that same one when it's time for the full submission. When do you not use, let me make sure I hit that, yeah. When do you not use the proposal intake questionnaire? When do you contact Ag Grant instead? Anything that's an award action. So if you're requesting a no-cost extension, if you need to change a PI, if you need to do a budget modification, and keep in mind when you're doing that, you also need to notify Sponsored Programs Accounting. If you're doing a non-monetary award, such as a material transfer agreement or a non-disclosure agreement, those actions are not proposals, and you still need to contact Ag Grant to get those things started. Where do I find the PIQ? As I said, it is an online form, and that link is right there on your screen for you. There's also a link on the OSP website to the form. There is a link in our Funding Opportunities Digest that goes out weekly. There's a link in most of OSP staff email signatures, particularly mine. And you know what? If all else fails and you can't find any of that, and you don't remember where it is, just go ahead and email Ag Grant, and Hope will pop that link back to you so that you can fill out that form. We're trying to make it as easy on you as possible to get that going. And I will put the link in the chat in just a moment. I can't get to it at the moment when I've got my screen shared, but I'll do that in a minute. So why are we using the PIQ? Why was this developed? As I said earlier, it's to provide preliminary information to OSP so that we can assign the appropriate coordinator to your proposal, and so that we can allocate our resources. We know that, especially since we've asked you to notify us early, that some of that information may change. Your title may only be a draft title. You may even change your project start and end dates. Maybe you're even going to change a co-PI or two here and there. That's okay. We can make those changes as we go along, but having that preliminary information gives us the ability to go ahead and start building that budget worksheet, gives us the ability to go ahead and put the shell of that proposal in Cayuse. And as I said, to allocate our resources. So it's really helpful for us to have that up front. But it also allows us to work smarter, not harder. Previously, when faculty would notify Ag Grant of a proposal, we would pop back a couple of questions. I think it was 5 questions that had some basic information. But that really isn't enough for us to really get started on that proposal. And so there's often a back and forth between the coordinator and the PI getting that information. This form allows us to have that information right up front at the very beginning and not delay the start of that proposal. So it saves us time gathering that info. It also gives us the ability to be consistent with our data and have that data readily available. This data dumps into us when the form is filled out. On the back end, that data dumps into an Excel spreadsheet. We can actually use that Excel spreadsheet to report on some things internally that are not available in Cayuse. It also helps with the automation of some of OSP's internal procedures. As I said, that data dumps into an Excel spreadsheet, and then we are able to simply copy and paste from that line of data into our proposal checklist, and it pre-fills and auto-populates our proposal checklist, and then later on it pre-fills and auto-populates our award checklist. So that ability to do that prevents us from having to retype data. It prevents us from having data entry errors. It allows us to do some calculations on lead time and some other things. It also allows us to provide consistent folder and file names within our internal storage, our network storage. So really that's saving OSP a lot of time, but it's not just about us, because the more time we save on those types of things, the more time and staff resource we have available to work with you and help you develop a quality proposal and get it submitted on time. How do you complete the PIQ? So what I'm going to do here is point out some key or problematic questions. We have been actually using the PIQ since the beginning of October, and we've processed almost 100 of those. I think as of today, we'll probably hit that 100 mark. So we've been using this for a little while, and that has given us the opportunity to see what questions on that form might be confusing to faculty or might be open to some interpretation. So I'm going to go over a few of those questions here to ensure that we're getting the answers that we need. And then when I'm done with this PowerPoint part of this, I will actually open up that form and we'll walk through a form together. One of the key things that I want to note is that we really need one PIQ for each proposal. If you or your team are going to submit multiple proposals to the same RFA, that happens quite a bit with AFRI. You may have two distinct projects that fall under the same AFRI program. We do need a proposal intake questionnaire for each of those proposals. One of the first questions on that proposal intake questionnaire is, who is the lead admin unit? What we want there is the lead admin unit that matches the primary activity part of the proposal, the primary activity type of that proposal. I'm going to use AFRI as an example here. AFRI often requires, or other USDA programs often require for you to have an integrated project. So you have to have both research and extension involved in that project. We have to designate one of those as the lead. So we ask you for that lead activity unit. There's a second question shortly after that that says, okay, now that you've identified your lead admin unit, what other admin units may be involved? And at that point, you can tell us if extension or another admin unit is involved in that. Due date seems like it would be a simple question, but it can actually sometimes be confusing, particularly when we're a sub-award. So obviously, if we're applying to NSF, NIH, DOE, USDA, whatever, we need that due date for that project. We're going to know what that is, so we need to have that due date. If it is one of those programs, NSF does this quite a bit, that does not have a specified due date, that it's rolling and they accept applications all year long. In that point, please give us a target submission date. What date that you aim to make that application for. That allows us to get you on our calendar and go ahead and start giving those resources. In some instances, we will need a second due date. That would be when we are a sub-award. So if North Carolina State University is applying to NIH and we are going to be a sub-award on that proposal, we need to know that NIH due date, the date that North Carolina State has to submit those materials to NIH. We also need the date that we have to submit our materials to North Carolina State University. Those are usually at least a week, if not longer, different. So there are two separate questions on the PIQ about due dates, one for that prime agency and one when we are a sub-award. We also have the opportunity in that PIQ to tell when another UT campus is involved. So maybe we're working jointly with UT Knoxville or UT Martin. The PIQ has an opportunity to tell us that. Also, if one of our research and education centers are involved, That question is on the PIQ. That one's really important because we need to be able to create a separate budget for that rec for their expenses and make sure that those expenses get allocated properly. And so notifying us early that a rec is involved will help us do that more quickly. This next one is probably one of the single most things that we see having some confusion, and it is extremely important to making sure that the budget is developed correctly. And that is with co-PIs. As you know, many of our faculty have joint appointments where they have both research and teaching, or they might have vet med and research, or extension and research. We need to know that co-PI's role on the project, not their primary appointment. Often those two are the same thing. Somebody who has a primary research appointment, maybe 70R and 30E, most of the time the proposals they're involved in are going to be research, but sometimes they would be extension. So we need to know what the role on the project is. We're able to look in IRIS and figure out what their appointment is, but that won't tell us what their role on the project is. So please, as you're filling out co-PI information, make sure that you're talking about their role on the project, not their appointment. And something that is relatively new, we do have the ability now to, for research or extension faculty, say somebody that's 100% research, maybe they are going to do a little bit of extension work on this project because it is an extension only project. We can still do that. So that's another reason why this role is extremely important. And that role is what helps us determine the correct F&A rate on that proposal. Also, if any of your team members have a joint faculty appointment with ORNL, we need to know that. There are several steps that we have to go through, additional steps when we have a JFO involved in a proposal. So having that at the PIQ stage allows us to go ahead and begin that process and not risk delaying your submission for that. And lastly, subawards. If UTIA is the lead organization, and we are going to have subawards maybe to Tennessee State, and maybe we'll have a subaward to North Carolina State, there is the opportunity on the PIQ to tell us that. And what's key there is we need to know the basic information of who that subaward is, who their PI is, and what their role on the project is. Again, it kind of goes back to that co-PI issue of North Carolina State could be doing research with us, or they could be doing extension with us. And we need to know that so that the proper F&A rate can be applied. And that is the end of my canned slides. So let me close that down and go to the proposal intake questionnaire. So this is the proposal intake questionnaire, and Hope put the link in the chat for us. Thank you very much, Hope. It's really pretty simple. When you land on this page, you'll see a short introduction, and then the questions dig in. So we're going to answer this as if this is ag research. So here it is asking our lead admin unit. Then here's the question where you have the opportunity to tell that you've got other units involved. Maybe it's ag research lead, but there's also extension involved in this proposal. Maybe there's a rec involved in this proposal, so you have the opportunity to do that. Other UT campuses involved. If you've got UT Knoxville involved in this proposal, this is your opportunity to do that. There are very special things we have to do in CAIUS when another UT campus is involved. So this question is extremely important that we know up front that another campus is involved. Here's our first question that has logic built into it. If we are the lead applicant, the next question is going to ask us as prime funding agency. But if another campus is the lead, you see that choice has changed, because now the form needs to ask which campus is the lead campus. So that's an example of the type of logic that's built into these forms, so that not every faculty member is answering every question on the form every time. It's going to change based on your particular project. So sometimes the amount of questions you answer can be very, very short. Sometimes they're going to be more questions. And here's also where, if we are going to be a subaward to another institution, if you click that, then the questions change again. And this is where you would tell us who that other institution is, say North Carolina State University. For this example, we're going to go back through and say that we are the lead applicant. Prime funding agency, easy enough. Many of these questions are really straightforward, so we're just going to kind of fly by them. USDA, it's AFRI, it's not an AFRI, it's applied research. Due dates to the prime funding agency. Again, really key piece of information for us. You can put in a link to that funding announcement. If you have the funding announcement or other documents as a PDF or a Word or Excel file, you can upload them here. Project type, here's where we talked about, new proposals need to be done here, pre-proposals, letters of intent. This allows us to know the project type. Obviously, draft descriptive title is pretty self-explanatory. Your start and end dates. This question about research development services is something that's rather new. You probably know that UTIA has a contract with Hanover Research and is able to potentially provide research development, editing, assistance on proposals. That does require 3 months lead time. We also have Orange Team Review, which requires at least 4 weeks lead time. But what's new is that due to the reunification with UTK, the research development services from the Office of Research Innovation and Economic Development are now available to UTIA faculty. They can provide editing and advising services and even go farther in depth with that. So if you want any of these types of research development services, you have the opportunity to tell us up front, and then we can immediately connect you with the folks that you need to be connected to and get that going very quickly. I have a question about, can Hanover help PI on 2 proposals? That is going to be a Dave White question. What we do when you mark Hanover Research is we then direct you to the proposal intake page for Hanover Research. And when you fill that out, then they will get back with you and let you know whether you qualify and what is available at that point. If you are, I had another question about each proposal needing its own form. If you're submitting to multiple proposals to the same agency with the same due date, yes, each proposal needs its own form. Question about where the work will be performed, that's pretty self-explanatory. That helps us determine off-campus, on-campus F&A rates and a couple of other things as well. And then there's a couple of simple questions about MTAs and fundamental research. And then you're at the end of the first section. So it's really pretty simple. You click the next button, and now we go to the project personnel section. This is where we're going to find out about the people involved and their roles on the project. Obviously, first and last name of the PI, lead PI, easy peasy, department. Here again is where we get into the logic questions. If you mark no, you will not have any UTIA or UT co-PIs, and you mark no, there's only one other question and you're done with this section. So this section is very short if this is a single investigator proposal. But if you have PIs and you mark yes, then it opens up additional questions about the name and department of that PI, which is pretty self-explanatory. And here's where we get into that question about the role on the project. So this is where we need to know the role on the project, not their primary appointment. So once you mark that accurately, then it's going to say, do you have another co-PI? And if you mark no, again, you're basically done with this section. If you mark yes, it's going to ask you again for that same information on your second co-PI. To make this shorter today, we are going to click no. There are no more UTIA or UT co-PIs. We don't have any joint faculty agreements. We're going to hit next. And now we're to the last section, which is the subaward section. And this asks, how many subawards will you have? If you have none, you're done. You can wipe your hands, you're done with the proposal intake questionnaire. But if you do have subawards, then it's going to open up another box where you're able to put in some basic information about that subawards. We thought about making the form where we asked a lot of questions about each subaward, but we wanted to keep it a little bit more simple. So at this point, you can just provide basic information. And when the coordinator is assigned your proposal, he or she will work with you to get more details on that subaward. So at this point, you're done. The only other option you have is if you want an email of your answers to this PIQ, if you click this box, once you hit submit, it will shoot it back to you as an email. And that's really all there is to it. It is pretty self-explanatory. There are those couple of questions about due dates and the question about roles on the project that can get a little tricky, but that's why we're doing this today. So I am done with the bulk of my presentation, and if anybody has questions, you can pop them into the chat or you can unmute yourself and we will talk about it. No questions? Either that means people are being shy or we've done a really good job with this thing.
Holly, there's a question about how long would it take for an OSP to assign a coordinator after I've sent the questionnaire in the
Wonderful.
chat.
Thank you, Amy. Generally, that's going to happen probably within a working day. So our general process is that we check the responses to this twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And Hope in our office is the one that monitors that. And then she sends them to me and I assign a coordinator. And that usually happens pretty quickly. So I would say normally within a day, you're going to have a coordinator assigned to that. Sometimes it's a little more tricky if there's some interesting information in that proposal, or if we've got to do a little bit of research on the RFP or the submission method. Sometimes that might take a little longer. And of course, weekends, holidays, that sort of thing will make it take a little bit longer as well. If a co-PI role is research and extension, can you check both boxes? Actually, I don't remember. So let's just go back there and see. Yes. Come on. There we go. We do not have that right now. So and I think we did that because on the internal processing side, it's hard to parse that out when you have multiple answers. So what I would suggest you do in that spot, in that case, is on the first page, you have the opportunity to do additional comments or information, and you can put that there. But I'll keep that in mind and see how that works as we go down the line and see if we need to make changes in the future. And OSP always welcomes your feedback. So if you've done this process already and have found it very good, if you've had problems with it, if you go to do this process in the future and you want to drop me an email about how it worked or the negatives or positives of that, please do that. This is a living document in a living form, and because it's online like this, we have the ability to make some changes as we go along, and it doesn't require sending out new forms. It doesn't require printing anything new, and it doesn't require even a new link to the form. So we can make changes and those changes be transparent to everybody and not have to change links. Thank you. I'm glad you found it easy. Well, I will stay here for just a minute or two longer in case anybody has any more questions, but I'm not seeing at the moment. So if you would like to go ahead and leave, please do so. I will be posting this to our the recording of this to our website, and we'll send that link out to UTIA all here in the next couple of days. Thank you.